In 1803, Thomas Jefferson set out to buy a city. He ended up buying 828,000 square miles, roughly a third of the modern United States. But the land wasn't really the point. It never was. It was always about one river and who controlled where it ended. That river was the Mississippi. That city was New Orleans. And the reason a founding father spent that kind of money to control a patch of swampy Gulf Coast tells you everything about Louisiana. Because this state's power was never about culture or history, it was about position. Whoever controlled the mouth of the Mississippi controlled the entire American interior. And the answer to why that still matters today has almost nothing to do with what most people think. Louisiana is less like land with water in it, and more like water with land in it. And running through all of it is the Mississippi River, draining 41% of the continental United States. 31 states. All of it funneling south, through Louisiana, out into the Gulf. Louisiana isn't near the mouth of that system. It is the mouth. That single fact shaped every decision that followed. Geography isn't just about land. It's about what that land produces. And what Louisiana produces is shaped by what sits beside it. The Mississippi's centuries of flooding deposited some of the most fertile soil in North America along its banks. Beneath the surface, a different kind of wealth accumulated: oil and gas. But here's what ties both together. None of it, not the grain, not the oil, reaches the world without the river. The Mississippi isn't just geography, it's infrastructure. The oldest, largest, and cheapest freight system in North America. This is where Louisiana's advantage stops being local and becomes national, and where the real economic power of the river comes into focus. Moving freight by barge on the Mississippi costs a fraction of what it costs by truck or rail. A single barge carries the equivalent of roughly 70 truckloads. A standard river tow pushes 15 to 30 barges at once. The river doesn't just move goods, it makes moving them cheap enough to compete on a global market. And the Mississippi doesn't connect to one river, it connects to a network. The Ohio, the Missouri, the Arkansas, the Tennessee, the Illinois. Together, 14,500 miles of navigable inland waterway reaching from the Gulf deep into the American heartland. A farmer in Iowa is connected, by water, to a cargo ship bound for Egypt. The link between them runs through Louisiana. This is why New Orleans was founded in 1718 exactly where it was. French engineers chose the first stable ground upriver from the Gulf, close enough to the mouth to dominate what passed through. It flooded. It was malarial. People moved there anyway, because geography made the location unavoidable. By 1840, the port of New Orleans was the fourth busiest in the world. That commercial power didn't diminish, it scaled. Today, the port of South Louisiana is the largest port by tonnage in the entire Western Hemisphere. Louisiana's port system handles roughly 20% of all U.S. waterborne commerce. 60% of America's grain exports, corn and soybeans feeding people across Asia, Africa, and Europe, move through this corridor. Layered on top of the water infrastructure, 6 major freight rail lines, 6 converging interstate highways, and the Louisiana Offshore Oil Port, the only deepwater facility in the U.S. capable of receiving the world's largest supertankers. The infrastructure density here is not accidental. It is a continent organizing itself around a bottleneck. Once the trade corridors were established, cities followed, and they settled exactly where the river's logic demanded. Settlement followed the natural levees, low ridges of sediment deposited by rivers during centuries of flooding, rarely more than 15 feet above the surrounding marsh. The only buildable land in a landscape dominated by water. The major cities tell the same story. Baton Rouge sits at the farthest point upriver that ocean-going ships could reach, the natural boundary between sea-going vessels and river barges, which made it a magnet for heavy industry. New Orleans sits where the Mississippi bends closest to Lake Pontchartrain, on the first stable ground above the Gulf. Every major settlement is where it is because the river put it there. When you're the busiest port on the continent, the world comes to you. New Orleans didn't seek out its mix of cultures. The river delivered them. Louisiana didn't get powerful by producing things. It got powerful by being the only way out for things everyone else produced. After the Civil War dismantled the plantation system, the river remained. Then oil arrived, and the corridor between Baton Rouge and New Orleans became the most dense stretch of oil refineries and chemical plants in the country. 3 of the 7 largest oil refineries in the country still operate here. They're here because the river is here, because crude can be moved in, products can be moved out, and the cost of doing both is lower than almost anywhere else. Then there's the Henry Hub, a pipeline junction in the small Louisiana town of Erath that became the primary pricing benchmark for natural gas across North America. When energy traders quote the price of natural gas, they are quoting Henry Hub. One small town in Louisiana sets the price of natural gas for an entire continent. Not because of a political decision, because pipelines, like rivers, follow the cheapest path. And in America, that path runs through Louisiana. The through line is always the same. The river lowers costs. Lower costs concentrate activity. Concentrated activity creates the infrastructure that prices markets, moves harvests, and refines fuel for the world. Jefferson bought a city. What he actually bought was the mechanism. Every choke point carries its own vulnerability, and Louisiana's are as dramatic as its advantages. The Mississippi River doesn't want to stay where it is. The Atchafalaya River, branching west, offers a route to the Gulf roughly 150 miles shorter, and the river has been pulling toward it for decades. If it completes the shift, New Orleans and Baton Rouge lose their shipping channel. The largest port system in the Western Hemisphere becomes stranded on a secondary waterway. The economic disruption has been estimated at hundreds of millions of dollars per day. The only thing preventing this is the old river control structure, a system of dams built by the Army Corps of Engineers in the 1960s, holding the Mississippi to a course it would naturally abandon. Then there is the coast. Since the 1930s, Louisiana has lost roughly 1,900 square miles of wetland, an area the size of Delaware. As the wetlands disappear, so does the buffer between the Gulf and everything Louisiana has built. Every mile of marsh absorbs roughly 1 foot of storm surge. Hurricane Katrina made the cost of that math visible. $200 billion in damage, a major American city partially destroyed. The vulnerability was always structural. The storm just revealed it. In 1803, Jefferson set out to buy a city and came home with a continent. But it was always about the river and who controlled where it ended. That's Louisiana's story. The Mississippi functions like a massive conveyor belt, pulling goods from 31 states, concentrating them at a single exit point, and pushing them into global markets at a cost no other system can match. Louisiana didn't build that conveyor belt, geography did. Louisiana just sits at the end of it. The decisions that followed were human ones: where to build cities, which industries to attract, how to manage the water. But every one of those decisions was made inside a frame that the river built first. New Orleans did not become a world port because its founders were clever. It became one because the continent gave them no other reasonable choice. Louisiana sits at the bottom of a continent, holding the drain open. The question the state is now navigating is whether the land itself can survive long enough to keep doing the job that geography assigned it, long before Jefferson, long before anyone thought to ask.